The Prime Minister has praised the courts for handing out tough sentences to some of those involved in last week's riots. Yesterday, 2 men were jailed for 4 years for using Facebook to try to incite rioting, and another was given 18 months in prison for having a stolen TV in his car. But concerns have been raised by lawyers, MPs and justice campaigners that some sentences are too harsh. Our political correspondent Ross Hawkins reports.
Is the justice served after these riots proving to be too tough? Today, the Prime Minister said no.
They decided in that court to send a tough sentence, a tough message, and I think it's very good that courts feel able to do that. What happened on our streets was absolutely appalling behaviour, and to send a very clear message it's wrong and it won't be tolerated is what our criminal justice system should be doing.
He was talking about the 4-year sentences for what these men, Jordan Blackshaw on the left and Perry Sutcliffe-Keenan, wrote on Facebook during the riots. They separately and unsuccessfully used the website to try to encourage disorder in Cheshire. Blackshaw is appealing, and some think their punishments were too harsh.
When you hand out long sentences for offences such as the one that we've seen in this Facebook case, they don't really square up to the kind of offence that would normally receive that sentence, and the danger is it actually undermines our response to those more serious crimes.
But the police in this case said the consequences of those Facebook posts could have been enormous.
And this was admitted behaviour, these were guilty pleas. How many other people would have engaged in criminal activity? How many tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions of pounds worth of damage would have been caused?
At Westminster, a number of Liberal Democrats have questioned some of the riot sentences.
In relation to other offences where perhaps someone has been sentenced to a custodial sentence, a prison sentence for taking a bottle of soft drink, a packet of chewing gum, I do question whether that is the appropriate response.
Here in London, where courts like this one worked through the night after the riots, 1,000 people have now been charged. But experiences of alleged offenders differ across the country. In Southampton, an 18-year-old arrested on suspicion of trying to incite violence on Facebook was released without charge. And in the southwest of England, 4 men and an 11-year-old girl got nothing more than words of advice from police officers about what they wrote on social networking sites. Perhaps inevitably there are those judging the judge's verdicts on this disorder. But with over 1,100 people already having appeared in court, there are many more sentences to come. Ross Hawkins, BBC News, Westminster.
Our legal correspondent Clive Coleman is here. As Ross was saying, I mean, there are some very big discrepancies, aren't there, in the way that people are being sentenced?
There are. I mean, courts work according to sentencing guidelines that are laid down by the Sentencing Council, on the one hand, which is the body that's designed to create transparency and consistency in sentencing, so that you're sentenced in a similar way, whether you're for a particular offence, whether it's Birmingham, Bradford or Bournemouth, for instance. There is also guidance from the Court of Appeal. However, sentences are independent. Sentencing guidelines are guidelines. They're not tramlines. Sentences are allowed to depart from them. What's been happening is that it appears that they've been departing from them in differing degrees. Magistrates' courts and the Crown Court, we know now from the cases heard in Manchester yesterday, have been departing from the established guidelines, but there's been some discrepancy in the degree to which they're departing from them.
And there's also going to be, I mean, it's taken up an awful lot of time with the courts, hasn't it? And we could see that even more now because there are going to be so many appeals, presumably.
I would say it's a stone-cold certainty that a number of these sentences will go to appeal. They'll be tested on appeal. You just have to look at some of the discrepancies here. If you take, for example, a man who was pleaded guilty to the theft of 2 T-shirts, valued perhaps £60. He had no relevant previous convictions. He received 1 day in custody. Another man pleads guilty to burglary. He goes into a shop, takes £3.50 of bottled water. He, again, has no previous convictions that are relevant. He gets 6 months. It's inevitable that a rash of these cases will go on appeal.
Clive, thank you very much. Well, 10 days after the violence erupted in North London, the Prince of Wales and the Duchess of Cornwall have been visiting community groups in Tottenham this lunchtime. Our correspondent Nick Witchell is there, and who have they been meeting, Nick?
Yes, the Prince of Wales and the Duchess of Cornwall breaking off from the royal family's holiday up in Balmoral, where of course they, and in particular the Queen, have been following events of the past 10 days with very great concern. The Prince of Wales, the one member of the royal family really who has a track record of trying to do something about the problems of the inner cities and of disadvantaged youth through his various charities. And just now they are here in Tottenham in North London. They're in the leisure centre there behind me, where they are meeting some of the people in this borough who were affected by the disturbances, and some of the people who are trying to help them, or also some of the members of the emergency services, police, the fire officers and the ambulance crews who were out on the streets during the disturbances. Now, some 45 families in this borough alone lost their homes during the fires. Of course, the Carpetright store was the most visible example of the destruction that took place, and the Prince and the Duchess are meeting some of those families and also some of the businesses who have been affected. Some 100 businesses in this borough alone, and certainly I think that some of the Prince's charities, the Prince's Trust in particular, is likely to be intensifying its efforts to help the victims of the disturbances, not just in this borough but elsewhere in London and indeed elsewhere in the country.
Nick, thank you very much.